welcome back.
Hey, hi, how are you?
Oh, welcome back. It's been a long summer. So we have the picture up so you can see that, and we're going to do this picture and use a spray bottle. So I hope you saw that in the instructions. So just a little spray bottle with water. You can use a brush with water and just sort of drop water on. So that will work too, but the spray bottle gives a mist. So we'll see how it works. We'll do it together and we'll do it slowly, so not to worry. I'm not going to turn my camera just yet, but I do have it on the easel, and I will take it off the easel to paint. A blow dryer. You might want a blow dryer. You might not. I probably won't use it, but I've got it handy just in case. And you want some water. Of course, a couple of dishes of water. Paper towel. You know how you come back after not doing it for a while and you forget, oh, what else do I need? Well, paper towel, brushes, of course, and paint. I cleaned my paint tray, so it's still mucky, but I cleaned it. And maybe white. You might need some white if you've got it. Good. If not, that's okay. We can paint without it, but it might give that misty look too. So at the bottom of the picture that you're looking at on the screen, it looks like it's sort of a browny white color, and that it's just paint or paper left white. So we're not actually painting all that white on. The white is just a little bit of accent around some of the rocks that you might want to put on there, and maybe a little bit in the water for a bit of a mist. So the colors for this are cerulean blue and indigo, burnt sienna and burnt umber, and possibly white. So just by mixing those colors, we'll come up with those grays that are on there, and some of them that are a little bit darker. So when we mix burnt sienna with indigo or burnt sienna with cerulean blue, you'll get a little bit of a gray color. So that's how we get that gray that's in there. And I guess I didn't say black. I didn't say black, but we can do the birds in black, or we can do the birds by mixing indigo and burnt umber. So that's up to you. So we have a number of different techniques we're going to use this year. One of them is using masking fluid. So if you have masking fluid, you're ahead of the game. If you don't have masking fluid, you can start to look around for that. That is, the technique that we'll use is to leave the paper underneath white, and then we paint everything else over. And at the end, we take that masking fluid off. So I'll show you the picture that we're going to do with that, which will give you an idea how the masking fluid works. And so you can start to look around for masking fluid, or sometimes they call it like a rubber cement, but not to buy rubber cement, but that's kind of what it's like. And I think another name for it is frisket. So we'll paint these cactuses, and where that's white, that's where the masking fluid goes on, and then once we paint, we take that off. So we end up with a really pretty picture with some really soft white edges. So let's just get into art mode. We'll do those deep breathing. We'll do 3 deep breaths. So just really focus. You can close your eyes if you want to. And you can take a deep breath and let that deep breath go right in and around your belly, almost like a circle in and around. And then just pause for a second, and you can actually in your mind just call it a pause, and then just release that breath. So we're just getting into the here and now so that we can focus on the art. So first, deep breath in and pause and release. Second deep breath in into the belly and pause and release. And our third deep breath in. And hold it for a second. And release. And just let any tension go from days gone by or today or things that you need to do. Let that grocery list go or that to-do list, and we'll just focus on this art project, which is a very soft, very pretty picture. Just like you, I have a blank canvas. I drew a little one so I can show you this spray technique, and I have a full-size one. Got my paint in the way. Oops. Let's move some things here. And we'll do our reading at some point as well. So with this, I'm just going to turn my camera down. You can see that. There we go. I'm going to wet my canvas, all of the sky. So if I do a little picture and show you, I'm going to wet my canvas just with clear water, not with the spray bottle. Just wet the canvas, and it's okay to go over that rock and over those birds. And then I'm taking cerulean blue, and I'm just going to pop it on my sky. So this is the part where we put the color on, have some fun. So I've got my color on. And it's a little bit darker, a little bit lighter in spots. You can see I wasn't too concerned about how it went on. And then I have my spray bottle. So I'm just going to spray my sky. You can see that that's moving. So I'm only doing the top part. I can actually dry that bottom part. Don't need it to go below that line. Whoops. I'm going to do it anyways. And then I'm going to turn my canvas. I'm going to move it and let that sky flow. So I'm just going to dry anything that goes below the line, but I want that to flow. So this is just a little sample, just to show you how that will move and become a little bit wispy looking. Now, if I do it on the larger canvas, thank you, Troy. If I do this on the larger canvas, again, I'll go back and do that again. Just get my sky wet. Get all the sky wet, going over the birds and over the mountain. Just a little mountain, little rock. Then put on cerulean blue. And you can see I'm not really too concerned about perfection or lighter, darker. This is just, as we said earlier in the recording, this is just a piece of paper. Sometimes a piece of paper doesn't want it to accept the colors the way you like it, and that's okay. Now that I've got that on there, I'm going to spray some water and then move my canvas and let that flow. I'm actually turning it upside down. I'm just going to get a nice flow. And if I have excess, I can just tap that off with my paper towel. So it will move for a moment or two. It will continue to move. You can see that paint just ever so lightly flowing. And I've got these heavier spots. I'm just going to move those with a piece of paper towel. And this is the thing about watercolor. When you do this and you spray and you let the paint go wherever it's going to go, this is something that you can't duplicate by actually painting it on. when you let the water and the movement just do its own thing, very difficult to duplicate. Oh, and if this is stressing you out, just take a deep breath, let it go. So where my paint was pooling and it was a little bit heavier, I just used the edges. You can see I just used the corner of the paper towel, and that just picked up that excess paint without really disturbing the picture. So there's my sky. So it's soft. Your sky may look different than mine. That's okay. They're not supposed to be identical. That's the beauty of watercolor. So now that I have that on there, I'm going to move to my water. Now I have some rocks, and I want to go around the outer edge, leaving about a half an inch above my rocks. I don't want to go into that area. It's okay to go around these smaller groups of rocks. But even in here, I just want to do a little bit at the top of this group of rocks. So my blue, my indigo, I'm using, it's just a different, it's an angle brush. It's still a very small brush. So I'm just getting it wet and going into my indigo. And I'm going to draw a line where I've got my line, my horizon line with indigo. I'm coming across that line, just across. Just drawing that right below my mountain, right to the other side with indigo, all the way
If I
across.
don't have, sorry, Kathy, if I don't have indigo, what can I use?
Do you have ultramarine blue?
Yeah, yeah.
That will work. That will work.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Indigo just has a deeper color. But if I were to use ultramarine blue, so this is ultramarine blue. See, it's just a little bit lighter. It still has a gray in it, so it will still work. But you don't have to do what I just did. I was showing you the difference of the two colors. So indigo, now I'm going to take that indigo, I'm going to go over those rocks or above those rocks. I'm going to leave that space. I'm not going to paint where those rocks are. I'm going to leave it open. So I'm going around those rocks, staying away from my little rocks. So if I just draw a line to show you, just stay away from those little rocks. And then we'll paint all in that area. And I'm doing almost like a V shape just above those other rocks. Just a V shape. So my indigo is fairly watered down. So if you put it on and it's quite dark, it will come out 20 to 30% lighter from when you put it on. So don't think you've done anything wrong. All of the paint, when it dries in watercolor, dries lighter. You'll notice in the picture that there's some lighter spots and some darker spots. So at this point, we'll just leave it. We've got one color on there, one coat. That's all we need. And because my upper paint was still a little bit wet, I've got a little bit of a spread of color. That's very pretty. It almost looks like it's a rain or something in the background coming down from my sky. That's perfectly beautiful, I think. So if you have that and you thought, oh no, it's spreading, it's okay. Take a deep breath, it's all okay. Just to stay away from any paint that you've got on there, we'll move down to this corner. So these little rocks, and I'm going to shift from that angle brush to a pointed brush. And we'll start, so this is a number of different colors going on, but these rocks are actually like little circles. So hopefully you drew them that way. If not, that's okay. So let's start with our burnt sienna, which is like a red terracotta pot color. And we'll just do a little circle around those rocks. We're just going to do a little circle. So you can see I'm not doing a full circle all the way around. If you're able to do a full circle, that's great. Sometimes I like just to do one half and then the other. So there's quite a few rocks there. So take your time and go around those rocks with the burnt sienna. We'll do more than one process on these rocks. But for now, we just want to get the outside edges. And some will be lighter and some will be darker. That's pretty natural for when you're standing on the shore, looking at rocks. Some of them have bigger spaces in between them. Some of them touch. Some of them aren't completely round, they're oval. Some of them might have a little bit of a ridge where they're not completely oval. They may look kind of oblong. Unless you're really sure-footed, this isn't the spot you would want to be walking on. And while we have this burnt sienna on our brush, maybe your water is dry enough now, so we'll go ahead and we'll paint that little inlet. It doesn't have to be completely flat or straight. If you hit the blue in some spots, that will give a darker edge. That's okay. You can have some lights and some darks. And we'll paint the little bubble of rocks, the little rock edge or sandy edge below that as well. Now I haven't painted the outer edge. I'm just going to touch that blue on the outer edge of that because the second one, the lower one, doesn't go right to the edge. So I'm just adding a little bit of extra paint in there. And then with these same rocks down in the corner, we'll move on to burnt umber. So that's a brown color. If you don't have something called burnt umber, it's brown. So you can see it's brown. So with that burnt umber, I'm going to fill in the center of some of those rocks. So you decide how many you want to do. You can do a lot or a few. We're still going to come back with gray, but we're just doing the surface of some of those rocks. And it's okay if that burnt sienna sits on the outside. We don't need to cover all of it. If you did cover all of it, it will look different when it dries because it had that color underneath. And while we have that burnt umber on our brush, we're just going to put a little bit of that on our little rock wall edge in the water. So still let some of that burnt sienna shine through, pop through. It's just going to give an uneven look to the rock wall that's there. And you can do a little bit of raised edge in spots if you like. It doesn't have to be a straight edge. While we have that burnt sienna going, let's go ahead and work on our mountain. So I'm going to make this mountain. It doesn't I'm just painting the outer edge. It can have some ridges. It doesn't have to be straight. It can be bigger in spots. It could have a little ledge if you like. And then I'm going to fill that in still with burnt umber, the brown, and I'm going right to the edge of the water. And you can see I've got some spots that are lighter and some that are darker. That's going to add to the look. Got a little bit that just sort of juts into the water. I did that. It wasn't deliberate, but it's fine. And then I'm going to mix some colors together. So I have burnt umber. And if you're using ultramarine blue, mix those two together. If you have burnt umber and indigo, mix those two together. You still get a dark color either way. You get a little bit darker when you mix with the indigo, but if you put a little extra blue, you get almost the same effect. So with that color, indigo, and your burnt sienna, it's going to look like a bluey gray color. We're going to fill in some more of those rocks. And you're going to take the rest of the color and fill in the white in between the rocks. And you can take that all the way to the bottom of the canvas. So you can see we have a nice rock wall with a variation of colors. And we'll stick with those two colors, whichever one you've got. If you've got the ultramarine blue and the burnt umber, or if you've got indigo and burnt umber. And we'll start to paint the rocks on the little rock walls that are jutting out from the water. They're just sitting out there. They're actually on the edge of the sand. So we'll paint the center one on the beach. I'm painting the little rocks. I still have the little spaces in between. If you have spaces still, they're fairly close together. So I have my medium size, I have my long wall, and I have my bigger pile. And that same gray, so I'm going to let those rocks dry for a minute. And that same blue and burnt umber color that we've created, I'm going to start to just paint a little bit of that on my mountain. I want it to look like there's almost trails going up the mountain. So I'm doing almost 3 stripes. So it's going to blend in a little bit, but you will see the lines. And I'm going to add the darkest, that color, to make a really dark edge on the bottom. So I want it to be fairly dark where it's sitting at the water. So you see, I'm just tapping my brush. I'm putting the paint on my brush and then just tapping the side of my brush so that it just sits on there, just at the bottom. And I'm not looking for a straight line. It's okay if it's not straight. Sometimes some rocks fall off the mountain and go into the water, so that's okay. Now that my rocks, they'll be mostly dry because there was a fairly small patch to do. I'm going back in with a darker color. So I'm adding more blue and burnt umber, but less burnt umber because I want it to be more of a bluey color. And I'm going to roll my brush. So I'm using my fingers to actually roll my brush, and I'm only getting paint on the tip of my brush. And with the tip of my brush, I'm going to start to paint very fine lines in and around those rocks. So I'm rolling my brush each time I go back onto the canvas so that I only have paint on the tip of my brush. And I'm just painting in between those rocks just to make it look like there's a crevice. And I'll do the same with my little piles of rocks on the beach. I'm just going in between the rocks, down along a side of one or two rocks, and just creating the look of a crevice. Just so that there's a shadow where there's a deeper spot of the rock. And I'll do my little pile. So I'm covering up the white, which is going to be a shadow. So this is closer rocks. So we see more detail. These are a little bit farther away. And you can go around some of them if you like at the top. And we've done something before, which is a lifting off technique. So if I get my brush wet, clean it off and tap it off on paper towel. Just make sure it's clean and it's damp, but it's not wet. Then I can do a little bit of lifting off. So when I lift off some paint, it will give a different color to this rock. So if I lift off a little bit of paint here, I'm just using my brush and it takes off some of the paint. Then I get the look of a little bit, almost a third color on this rock formation just by lifting off. So then I just wipe that paint off my brush, wet my brush again and tap the excess off. So I can do the same with these rocks. I can lift off just a little bit of that paint. So I'll leave it to you to remove where you like, where you think you might want to have some light showing. But that's just to show you, we can lift off and it gives a whole different look to some of those rocks. And we'll move to the top of the mountain and give this mountain some spikes. We can use that dark color again, back to that blue and burnt umber. And we're looking for some trees, just tree formations coming off the top of the mountain. You can have some in the center of the mountain where you can see them a little bit. There's just some spikes coming off the top or at the side or even from the bottom. So we're just going to let some more of this dry. We're going to go back into the sky and let's paint those birds. So if you've drawn your birds on, I'm just using straight black. If you want to use your combination of indigo and burnt umber, that's fine if you don't have black. We're just painting those birds. Just a light touch, almost not touching the canvas when you put the paint on. And if you need to take a deep breath here, go ahead and take a deep breath. This is just a piece of paper. If you're not entirely happy with the way it turns out now, you can redo this. The video will be available. So there's my birds. This one's coming down into the water. They're all going different directions. And let's come back into our water. If you used ultramarine blue, good. If you used indigo, good. That's up to you. I'm going to go back onto my water with indigo and do my horizon line again with indigo. So I want it to be the darkest all the way across. And with what's left on my brush, I'm going to bring that down into the rest of the water. So I'm not adding any extra, I'm just bringing that down. I'm going to have some lights and darks because of that. I'm not adding any extra paint. So I'm doing what's called dry brushing at this point. It's whatever's left on your brush. That's what you're using. You should, when you're doing this, if you're dry brushing, you should be able to hear your brush on the paper. Not to damage your paper, but you should be able to hear the bristles moving. And then I'm going to get my brush wet just with clear water. And I'm going to start, I'll start in the middle so you can see, but I'm going to do circles. You can see I'm doing circles with my brush. So I'm doing circles with a dampened brush and I'm softening that water edge. So where I have that line, I'm softening that edge. I'm just using water. So if I need to get a little more water, that's okay. The paint will have no choice but to move. And I'm just doing gentle circles with my brush. I want a really soft edge. So I'm picking something up on my brush. I'm not sure what that is, but I'm just using just water and I'm doing circles. So you get a nice soft edge. This is where the sand is and the water, sometimes water sits on top of the sand. So it gives a soft look. So wherever I have blue and white together, I'm going to blend it until it softens. Not to damage your paper, be careful with your paper, but I'm just doing little round circles. There's something on my brush giving me a funny little thing. All right, I'll just use a different brush. That's it. So just little round, soft, and you can do that right to the top of where the stones are on the first or the bottom right hand corner. So all of my edges are softened at this point, where that white and the blue is together. So I don't have a hard edge. Next, I'm going back to that indigo again, or if you're using ultramarine blue, and I'm going to just put some lines coming across just to show a little bit of deeper water. Just here and there. Not too much, not to overdo it. But I just wanted to look just a little bit deeper. And you can just do a few dots if you like. You don't have to have lines. You can just do a few little dots. Just a skinny little line. Just something to show a little more depth in the water. And then I'm going back into my burnt sienna. We haven't used burnt sienna for a while. That's the red paint, the terracotta color paint. And I'm going to splash some paint. So I need it to be a little bit wet. I'm going to do some dots on my sand. I don't want to come off my brush, so I'm going to use another brush to knock that off. I just want a few dots around on my sand. I'm also going to put on a little bit of the burnt sienna just here and there on top of the rocks. So I'm only going in the sand. Get a little bit of somewhere else, you can just touch that with the brush. And then with a clean brush, clean water, I'm going to do a wash over my beach. So I'm just using my brush. I'm doing a wash with water, just clear water in my brush. And I'm going to get some of my splatters that I put on there are going to start to blend. You'll see that it'll look like, oh, now it's a little bit of a sandy beach with rocks under the surface. And when you come around to the bottom of where your rocks are, just pull a little bit of that color. Just let some of that color blend a little bit. Just let that blend. That's the shadow from those rocks. There, you see there's a shadow from that rock. And there's a shadow from this rock. And we've got our white paint. And our white paint between those darker sections of water that you painted on there, I'm just going to put on a little bit of white, just as a wave. And I'm going to create wave, a little bit of wave motion underneath where that rock is at the water's edge. Some of it can splash up. A little bit of white just around the bottom of this group of rocks. So if your rocks were all smooth and straight, this will be an opportunity to give it a little bit of a splash and a little bit of a ridge. And the same with the little rocks below that one. You can just add a little bit of splashing. And if it looks really stark white, if you blend that a little bit, you'll find it will pick up that blue nicely and give a nice soft look. And while you've got that white on your brush at the water's edge, you can do some little curls just to soften that a little bit more, just near the water. And I'm just going to bring some of that water just a little bit closer. Just bring some of that in and add just a little bit of white to soften that up. And while you've still got some of that white on your brush, again, we're going to go over some of those rocks just to soften some of them. And I'm just going to pull my water in just a little bit closer. Just add a little bit. This is the beauty of watercolor. You can play and add and move things around. And I think I want to just add a few more rocks on the outside or near my sand. They've just all kind of disappeared. So there, I'm going to pop a few more on there, just in the sand, just tapping my brush. And there we have, from a blank piece of paper, we now have an ocean scene. I hope you liked that picture. I hope you enjoyed and you learned something different. And I invite you, we need to sign our art somewhere, so decide what your signature looks like. If you already know, great. If not, this is a great time to invent something, decide what your signature is like. Thanks, Susan. And you can sign your art Well, that was great. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope that you're glad to be back as much as I am.
Hopefully.
Remember, it's just a piece of paper, not to take anything too seriously. Have fun. Okay,
Right.
so take care. Thanks for joining. We'll see you again in a week.